Da 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 da! What's my good cheer? Welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes to get those notifications out. Let people know I've gone live. In the meantime, if you've never met me before, hi, I'm Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside. Today, well, it was a little bit of both in actuality. You know, I like to go for long walks, and sometimes I don't want to go for long walks, and sometimes you have to push yourself. You have to not necessarily push yourself. Sometimes you have to talk yourself into it. Sometimes you have to give yourself a little treat along the way. For myself, I says, oh, well, you get to stop off at the coffee shop and get yourself a nice cup of coffee for your walk. And, whatever it is to get yourself in the mode, because I know that those feelings of not wanting to move, those feelings of the couch and the remote control. I don't have a TV. I have not had a TV in, oh my goodness, over a half a dozen years. And I think that was a really, I can't say it was the best decision I ever made, because I gotta tell you, I have made some amazing decisions, and it might not look like it if you know the story of what's going on with my life and what has gone on with my life, but it's what I'm moving towards. And what I'm moving towards is serving me in the moment to make me feel better about myself. I love life. I've always loved life, but I'm not quite sure that I ever felt that life loved me. Again, we're always butting our heads up against something, and we can get pretty disillusioned in that. Being an optimistic person and being able to come across a lot of interesting characters, like interesting characters out there, characters that I know personally that I probably have a hard time, right? Digesting a conversation with them, let alone being able to be best friends or allies or team players, right? Because sometimes the person in front of us, the person next to us, even within our own families, we butt heads with ideas, all kinds of ideas, political, religious, cultural, traditional. And a lot of it is just sent down the line from one generation to the next. And we all think that we have to follow the leader in that. So again, I can say a lot of things, that was the best decision I ever made, but there've been so many, not just in the past half a dozen years or so, not in the past 10 or 20 years, but going back all the way back to when I was a little child, probably still in diapers. My father, I don't know. He gave us free reign when it came into decision making for all his kids. It was in the 60s and 70s. My father came from a dynamic family himself. Again, it's epigenetically we pass this stuff down to our kids, right? And it's about breaking those cycles and finding creative ways and finding ways that will stick, not just for your life, not just for my life, but for your kids' life and your nieces and your nephews and for the generations that you're never going to meet down the road. That's evolution. This is what we're supposed to be doing. And again, you could say, well, I don't feel like I belong in this. It doesn't matter what you feel. That's where you were dropped into. So in a way, we are the stewards within our own family. And again, when we butt heads, even within our own family, it gets to be pretty difficult to move along when we all have different ideas. I'm just coming out of some content actually right now. And this gentleman, he's a go-getter. He's borderline narcissist for sure, but super smart. But his ideas, I can tell just from taking in his content and being a spectator and a student in his conversation and in his ideas and thoughts, keeping in mind, right? There's culture, there is traditions, definitely political ideas that differ from me because I don't have any political ideas in general, right? I'd like to see mindset put in the school system. But other than that, I couldn't tell you one good candidate from a next, and I would probably just judge them on their nice haircut and the clothes they're wearing and their nice smiles. And that's no way to choose your leaders. Like, you know, right? I want the person and the people that I follow to be the example for me, right? Not necessarily that it can be done, because lots of times we live in a generation where we're just hacking away at something that doesn't work and we don't recognize for our entire lives it doesn't work, right? It's been since the 70s, 60s and 70s when women's liberation, right, came into effect, and people really started moving in a direction of being equal. And it's not a matter of women not being equal, right? We are equal, but our strengths lie in different aspects, right? We for thousands and thousands of years we are meant to be the nurturers. And not only that, the women are the ones that have the children, the right? So we are automatically inclined to be, right? That's everything. That child is everything to us, right? And when we get these ideas that we can do it by ourselves, we're hurting our children and we're hurting the next generations, right? My nieces, my nephews, and these are things that we've got to pay attention to, right? Even for myself. So it makes me admire people with these strong ideas, and I have strong ideas of my own, right? But to aggressively shove that down somebody's throat, right? To complain about being told what to do, and blah, 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 and blah, 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 just not even recognizing that in the moment, that's what you're bringing to the table, is that same aggression, right? Those same ideas, my way or the highway, or I'm right, you're wrong. And like I said, that's borderline, right? Because you have to be willing to be course corrected. I would not be sitting here right now if I wasn't willing to be course corrected, because I've been course corrected so many times. But nobody is going to shove an idea down my throat and tell me that's the truth when I know for myself, maybe not for the person who's shoving it down my throat, but I know for myself, because I can only control my own emotions, my own thoughts, my own actions, that I know that to be an untruth, right? Specifically, right? It's a common ball going on there. I wrote something down that he said. I don't know if I did it word for word, but he says, if you if you can easily utilize the shell, the body, the suit. Oh, this irks me. This irks me, right? Because it's not taken into consideration the human in me, right? Only those other parts of me, right? It's like a private club for those other parts of me. And it's not like I'm saying my other parts want to go off and party with this person, right? And believe these same ideas that they can't, because in that free choice, just like my father decided that I was going to have. And hello, Eugene. I'm on a roll here. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Right? And I've lost my track. Sometimes that happens to me, right? I'm in that spiel and I catch something out of the side of my eye, and then I have to just kind of stop for a second, bring myself to the main branch of the tree, and see if it comes back. But it is embodying in ideas. And this automatically makes it so I appreciate his ideas and his contents because I learn by that, right? I learn by everything. But that doesn't mean that this person would be invited to Christmas dinner, that I would say, "Oh, let's go for dinner and let's have a chit chat about your ideas," because the ideas are abrasive to the way I feel. And this is what segregates us. This is why I am so in love with the idea of mindset going into the school system, because it gives us tools. And these are tools that I would have done anything for. Right? This is why I'm passionate about it, because if I had any inkling, if I had this information as a 10, 11, 12-year-old, I most definitely would have felt better for myself. I might not have hated myself. I might not have done what this gentleman was talking about, because that's exactly what I did. I utilized my shell. I utilized myself, right? I treated myself like the stuff on the bottom of a shoe when you walk through a dog park. And I would have to say, right, um, good reason as to maybe why I was invited to this party was the fact that I feel different this way, right? I tend to swing with Hermes, right? I love being human, right? I'm creating the best human being I possibly can, but I this is not something that has just happened. This has been the course of my entire life, by saying it doesn't matter what you think, right? I have every right to be on this planet. I have every right to be in this community. And if you don't like me, that's fine, right? Right? You could stay with your own group, right? Live and let live, though. Live and let live. But I didn't understand this, because these were not lessons that came across my path. Not in any way, except when my father would say, "Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Two wrongs don't make a right." But it always seemed to be one sided in that, right? It was kind of like, do as I say, not as I do. And, that's the way a lot of people live and exist in this life. Sometimes it's just easier to follow the leader, right? But when you follow the leader, at one point, you're going to become that leader, right? You're going to be that person that somebody's going to look towards for those answers and that guidance, right? And, it's quite possible, free choice for growing up in my family, I grew up in a very dynamic family, right? My mother loved Jesus. My dad, right? He was very spiritual, and they were total opposites from each other, and yet not, because in some personalities, right, we take on what we learn, right? That information that comes across our path. And because so and so said it, right? I remember asking him, but why? Because I said so, right? And you just have to accept it as that. I am so grateful. And I don't say it enough. I'm so grateful for the experiences and the lessons and the conversations that come across my path, because this was not something that came across my path. I'd have conversations with my father, but it just didn't seem to sink through, and I don't really think that they were expected to be lessons for me, maybe just information to see if I would pick it up, because I really believe that we learn by our examples. Remember what I said, we have these issues and then we just pass them down from one generation to the next generations. And how do we dig ourselves out of that hole? It just takes one person to say, that's it. This is not right, right? You're not right. And I can't believe that. And sometimes we do have to butt heads in that. Sometimes we do have to just walk away from that, because no matter what, right, that this is not somebody that, right, they're part of your family, yes. But if they weren't a member of your family, if they were your next door neighbor, would that be somebody you would be hanging out with? Would that be somebody that you would say, oh, let me help you move, right? Let's go out for coffee, right? When you already have an idea of how their mindset is that. So in mindsets in the school system, they would have made it at the very least that we could communicate in a way that we can feel safe and comfortable, right? Because we'd be accepted for the boundaries that we have. We would be accepted for what we bring to the table, right? To be recognized, and by free will to take in as a truth or not, right? Or not. But again, we're so follow the leader, and we just take everything in as we don't get a say, or I've got to do that. I've got no choice, or they know better than I do. How do you know that? Right? Right? Because we're always put in our place. We don't even get a shot at going to bat. Right? And so I'm very grateful that by my choices, and why I think that personally that I might have been invited to this party, was the fact that I love life so much, right? That I learned to be my best friend. And maybe it wasn't by choice. Maybe, it was isolated. Maybe it was just safer, more comfortable. But nonetheless, I found that spot, and I found that relationship with myself that allowed me, right, to be willing to be course corrected in some of those funky ideas that I grew up in, right? And lots of us, right? We don't bloodlet anymore, in the 14th, 15th, 16th century. That's what they used to do. You get a cold, you get sick, you have a headache, right? They poke a big hole in you, and they would just let the blood spill out of you. And people would die from that, die from the infections, die from losing blood. spending so much time focusing on that solution, which wasn't a solution, rather than looking at other options or be at least willing to listen, right, to somebody else's idea of how to go about, right? We have to be willing not to be stiff in our ideas. We're not even close to being done, right? And we're all digging our heels in. I don't want to go. I'm not going. Right? In free choice, right? Maybe you can dig your heels in. Maybe you don't have to go anywheres, right? I think a lot of it is in the choices that we make, right? And that's how the information comes across our path, is just getting that per vesicant, one tidbit of information that you need that leads you into the next piece. And, that could be started in school. Oh my goodness. If I could have gotten into high school and had a good, healthy set of boundaries set around me, right? To be able to find my voice a little bit, to understand that I mattered, right? I could have started this a little bit earlier, but I'm a true believer. It's never too late, right? It's never too late. And I am not going faster and missing out on the lessons, and at the same time, right? I got to be very careful because there's a lot of information out there, and maybe it's for somebody, but it's not for me. And just because somebody says that's the way it is, it's not the way it is until I say that's the way it is, right? And I can only do that for myself. I can't do that for anybody else. And I'm not quite sure if I would, right? Okay, you guys, let's get into a word. We'll just go into it for a few minutes. If you've never popped into one of my lives before, these are 54 powerful words. They're just powerful words. It's the first thing that comes to my mind. I'll save that story for another day. Yeah, I'll save that story because we already been yapping for a while. Maybe I'll tell it tomorrow. Oh, wait a minute. Is it Friday today or is it Thursday? Oh, it's Thursday. So we got one more day. So maybe tomorrow we'll keep it light and I'll tell you a little story from today. But in the meantime, let's just grab a card, go into it just for a couple of minutes. First, oh, I already pulled it up, so it'll have to be that one. Resilience. Oh, you guys, what a great word. I love that. I'm not quite sure. I don't think maybe because yesterday we pulled the card community and I was all bummed out because I pull community all the time, right? 54 powerful words. And yet there are words in that deck that I have not even pulled from the deck yet. But this is one of them. I haven't pulled this one from the deck yet. Resilience is knowing the win will only come through the lessons in the failures. Oh, isn't that the truth? Isn't that the truth? But the thing is, it's the knowing the win will only come through the lessons in the failures. So it makes it when you say that because you already know those lessons, those failures, those catastrophes, those heartbreaks, that grief. You know that's where the lessons are, right? And if you know that, right, it makes it a little bit easier to accept that. And if you can accept that without fighting it or the woisy me or it's their fault or I'm not trying again, right? But you realize, right? It's in those failures that we get stronger, that we get better, right? And if you just pick yourself up after every, I do it all the time, but in my determination, I get things, I get things done. And that's my resilience is, I'll find a way. I'll adapt and conquer. I'll ride the waves, right? But I will whistle while I work, right? I will encourage myself and I will congratulate myself. I will cheer myself on, right? Because I know in this moment, right, that the win is only going to come through that. Nobody gets the gold medal at the Olympics without failing over and over and over again. And as we get better, right, as we pick ourselves up and try again, we get stronger, we get more resilient, right? We get more determined. We get more determined until it gets to the point where it's easy, right? And that is the lessons that we learned from the failures. That doesn't mean stop, congratulate yourself, give yourself the trophy, and sit on the couch with the remote control, right? It's next because you're comfortable. You know that. You got that down packed. Now you can put a little bit more on the plate, right? Get a little bit more specialized in what you do. And that's the truth. And that's where the strength, right? That's where the resilience, every time you're beaten down, right? That you just pop right back up like a jack in a box because you know. And that takes some of the bite away when you know. Resilience is knowing the win will only come through the lessons in the failures. Okay, you guys, that's all I got for you. Everybody, have a great night, and we'll see you tomorrow.